Welcome to the Coach Toolbox. This podcast is for coaches, leaders, and learners at all levels in organizations and in all walks of life. Here, you will get just-in-time learning that is research-based and practice-focused. The goal is personal and professional mastery. And now, our session today. Two people in a relationship create a system that sooner or later becomes unstable, especially when there's a problem of some sort that comes along in the relationship. And such problems invariably happen for all of us as human beings. So according to Murray Bowen, the leading expert in family systems therapy, the way for the two-person system to stabilize is to bring in a third person. This, as you know, creates a triangle. So in our conversation today, let's understand how these triangles are formed, the impact they have, and how we can manage the triangles in our relationships so that it does not draw us into unhelpful ways of being. And by the way, please do share this episode with people whom you think it would benefit. Now, the two-person system can be a husband and wife, boss and subordinate, wife and mother-in-law, parent and child, and so on. When any of these two-person dyads develop a problem, the anxiety created is diffused by bringing in a third person to form a triangle. And in the case of a wife and mother-in-law, guess who the third party is? Well, in simple terms, the way a triangle in a relationship works is that when there is a difficulty in the relationship between two people, one of them brings in a third person to ease the stress between the two original people. For example, difficulty between a husband and wife can be eased by one of the spouses bringing in a friend or a relative to help ease the tension between the two spouses. Or the tension between two co-workers can be eased into a less stressful triangle by bringing in a boss or another colleague. Or the tension between parents can be eased off by focusing completely on the child, and the child becomes the third part of the triangle. So what happens is that the tension between the original two parties is reduced in the triangle because now one of the parties now shares his or her problems with the third party of the triangle. Unfortunately, the third party is now drawn into the conflict situation and invariably ends up taking sides. So the tension between the two people in the original dyad now moves to a conflict between the third person who has been brought into the triangle and the person against whom he or she is taking sides. Now this may sound a bit complex, but take a few moments to think about the significant two-person relationships in your own life, at work and at home. And then see if you can identify how one of the two people invariably draws in a third person into difficult situations so that the system stabilizes within the triangle. And perhaps some of you have permanent triangle members who always seem to be drawn in to stabilize situations. Now, the problem with triangles is that the stress between the original two members shifts to the third triangle member and one of the original pair. But the stress in itself does not go away, nor does it get resolved. Only the players involved change. Now, you can spot the process of triangles in action when you hear workers talking about the boss, two friends or relatives gossiping about the third, and so on. Extreme examples of triangles include having an affair, or becoming completely consumed by other people's lives, or constantly thinking about one's child or something else other than oneself or one's own marriage or relationship. Let's take a hypothetical case. Completely hypothetical, I assure you. A successful professional called Ritu has to cope with abusive and dysfunctional parents who are still enmeshed in her life. So to deal with the imbalance of this relationship, she continually confides to her friend Jackie and depends on Jackie to make up the affection and attention that she, Ritu, does not get from her own parents. So Ritu's triangle is her parents and Jackie, with Jackie being the third party that eases the tension that Ritu feels in her relationship with her parents. However, If the third member of the triangle who was brought in is not able to relieve the tension between the original two, then the original two will look for another third person to be brought in so that a new triangle is formed. And now the emotional forces will run and seek diffusion in the new triangle. When situations become more critical and the stakes are higher, the two members can form multiple triangles with various parties, leading to a complex system of interrelated triangles. For example, if a couple is going through some difficulties in the relationship, then third parties who can be brought in include friends, family members, perhaps outsiders such as counselors or lawyers. And as more and more people get involved, the original conflict now has multiple outside people taking sides. The importance of understanding the principle of triangles is that it helps you and I look at relationships issues from a systems perspective, a perspective in which the problem is not black and white, but a complex palette of colors. However, we must be aware of polarization and getting caught in this taking up of sides, which many times is not helpful. So ask yourself, how might you be adding a third member in the triangle when you're working through some issues in an important relationship, either at work or in your personal space? As you understand a bit more about triangles in relationships, be aware of the triangles that are a part of your own life. To really understand your relationship with your own spouse or partner, look at the triangles that he or she are part of or that he or she invites into your life. And you should do the same to look at the people you invite into your own life. The crucial point is this: understanding the emotional forces that are introduced by the third party of the triangle can help you understand what is driving your partner or causing anxiety for your partner. As another example, a couple who face a relationship distance between themselves often put their child as the third party of the triangle. Depending on the situation, the child can either be called in as a mediator or to ally with one of the parents, or just become the center of attention so that the real issue between the parents need not be addressed. This then becomes a child-focused family in which case the entire life of the parents revolves around the child, even though the child is now married and living far away. In joint family structures or closely knit communities that we have in India, Asia, and so many other parts of the world, the interlocking systems of triangles creates emotional forces or pressures that impact a relationship between two people. Think of the impact of the relationships between your siblings and their spouses in your family, and parents and the various uncles and aunts and cousins, not to mention friends. Understanding this complex systems perspective will help you and I not to take things personally or to get entrenched into a position or to just put blame incorrectly. It can also help us be aware of triangles that are not helpful or are toxic or that really cross the boundaries in relationships. So thinking systems means being open to new data that comes in and being open to adapting or making appropriate changes. It means being sensitive to the emotions that are driving the person and the decision. So systems thinking and appreciating the influence of the various triangles that both parties are part of helps one appreciate the other's position in addition to one's own and to look for ways to help make both work. Very importantly, if you and I want our relationships to be more open and fulfilling, then we need to see what triangles we create to avoid our partner. Sometimes being obsessed with work or career can be part of a triangle that we create so that we avoid contact or connection with our partner. Or it could be taking up an activity or hobby or sport that completely consumes one's time, energy, and attention so that once again, one does not have to deal with the lack of connection in the relationship. In these cases, the work or hobby becomes the third point of the triangle between the couple. Therefore, a starting point in managing our relationships more effectively is to figure out, how do I contribute to this pattern of triangles? What are the triangles that I create? How can I change my part in the triangle that another has put me in? So the three questions are, how do I contribute to this pattern of triangles? What are the triangles that I create? How can I change my part in the triangle that another person has put me in? Know that you are a part of relationship triangles, both at work and at home, whether you like it or not. Or more accurately, whether you are aware of it or not. So it's not a bad thing to be part of a triangle. Triangles are not good or bad. They just are a part of how human relationships work. Now, as we bring our conversation to a close, here are some tactics to manage the triangles in your relationships. You will manage the triangle that you've become a part of by setting the intent to stay emotionally calm and neutral. So step one is to set an intent to stay emotionally calm and neutral. And step two, engage and communicate with your partner about the issues that might be causing stress. Another thing is to learn to regulate one's emotions appropriately. It's important that you not get drawn into the anxiety that is created by the other two members and that you don't get entangled in it. So the best place in a triangle is to be outside of it and not get dragged into it. That's why developing emotional maturity is critical to working effectively as part of the triangle that you're in or that you might create. Therefore, now let's accept that developing emotional maturity takes time and conscious practice. Often it's much easier said than done. So how does one start the process of developing emotional maturity? The various aspects of the development process include learning about human behavior, lots and lots of self-reflection, sharpening skills of engagement with your partner, and seeking feedback about yourself. It's also very helpful to work with a coach or a counselor. Having a good coach or a counselor as part of your own triangle is tremendously beneficial because your coach or counselor will not have a vested agenda and will actively support you by staying outside of the triangle and not getting enmeshed in it. Most times, friends or family members will not be able to maintain this distance. Now, as you become more emotionally mature, you will be able to deal with the large amount of stress and anxiety that is part of difficult phases in relationships and support your significant other by staying calm and not contributing to the emotional turbulence of the moment or situation. So, in conclusion, one important way to become better at managing your relationships, both at work and in your personal space, is to understand the role of triangles and learn to manage the way you respond within the triangle. So finally, remember to hit the follow button on this channel and connect with me via email to let me know how this channel might have helped you. Good luck. And that's it for today. Thank you for listening. Please connect with us on coachtoolbox@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to follow, subscribe, and review this channel. Details of our ICF-approved coach training programs and our services as executive coaches and coaching supervisors are on www.globalcoachtrust.org. See you in our next session.